Okay, so it is Monday, January 11th, 2021 at 4:27. It's just before 4:30. And it is a Monday, so it's interesting to get back in the swing of things here. So I would like to talk about a new video series. I'm going to be doing a few, and hopefully what I'll be doing is actually having more images, like maybe interspersed throughout these videos, or at least trying to get an idea for better lighting in here. It's just really difficult as far as the lighting goes. But I wanted to start this new series, and this is an introduction, and I'm going to call it The Rise of the New Gods. So I think that's kind of a catchy title, but I think it's appropriate as well when you hear what I have to say. And those of you who have heard some of my other podcasts, for instance, you might recall some of this information. You might be hearing a few clicks because I will be reading some things here. One of the things that really caught my attention recently is when Speaker Nancy Pelosi mentioned that their temple was invaded. Their temple of democracy is how she referred to it. And I think words matter. Now, I know we all use words, and we maybe could have used something different or maybe a better term to express what we're talking about. But I really believe that most politicians, most elected officials tend to forget that they are elected. They tend to forget that they are governing by consent of we the governed, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, not they, the government of the United States, in order to lead and rule a more subservient society, maybe I should say. So, and again, these are parts that I've shared before. These are things that I've written down from a while back. If we study mythology, because I'm talking about the rise of the new gods, well, in going back to where we get our form of democracy from the Greeks, right? The Greeks were pretty much that was the culture that invented the democracy. Later, the Romans also used it in the Republic, for instance, and that is Plato's Republic is where we get quite a bit of our information, or inspiration rather, for our current form of government. So our current form of government, even though we live in a constitutional republic, is based on ancient types of democracy going back over 2,000 years. Now, similarly, these Greeks not only believed in democracy, but they also believed in a pantheon of gods, such as Zeus, Hera, Apollo, Ares, right? Aphrodite. And later on, these became the Romans had the same gods, but they had given them different names. So you had Jupiter, or later Jove, where we get by Jove, right? You had, instead of Hera, you had Juno. Instead of Aphrodite, you have Venus. Instead of Ares, we have Mars. And so, and so forth and so on. Hephaestus, and then you get Vulcan, Hermes, or Mercury. And so these are gods, right? Poseidon, Neptune, but you get the meaning. You get what I'm saying here. So the same with Norse mythology. They had gods also, but the interesting thing is, let's take the Greeks. They were extremely powerful, these gods, right? Zeus is thunderbolts, and Poseidon was the god of the sea. Hades, also known as Pluto in Roman mythology, the god of the underworld. And so they were immensely powerful beings. At least this is what they were believed to be, immensely powerful beings, such as are those that would govern us, right? Congress and whether the president or governors. They wield immense power. But the problem is, just like the Greek gods, they act like spoiled children. They act like spoiled, petulant children, but with immense power and influence and finances and the backing of the world's most powerful military. I mean, they have all of these things going for them, but they still act like brats. Let's be honest. Immense brats and spoiled children with immense power, but children nonetheless. And so they're eager to cast the responsibility for their own actions, their own mistakes, upon others. It's always the blame game, right? Pointing fingers at everybody else. And they've all done it. Now, here's the problem. They seek to rule over the people. They don't seek to lead. At this point, what we're seeing is the legislative branch, with this second impeachment. And I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. You can hear if you listen to some of my previous videos, you'll find out that I believe I have certain spiritual beliefs, and wherever I fall in the political spectrum on any given issue is because of those spiritual beliefs, not because of an inordinate and loyalty to any political party or person. It's funny, this comic book. It was an issue of Daredevil. I can't remember which one, but I do believe that Frank Miller wrote it. He's very famous and very well liked for the most part amongst comic book aficionados. Whoops, sorry, hold on a second here. And so one of the things that when he was writing an issue of Daredevil, he had Captain America in there, and one of the generals was questioning Captain America's loyalty. And he's like, something about where your loyalties lie, Rogers, right? Steve Rogers, Captain America. And Captain America responded, "I'm loyal to nothing, General, except the dream." The dream of America, the dream of what we can be as a nation, this great experiment in democracy, this republic, this constitutional republic. And again, when I use those words like democracy and republic, they have nothing to do with the political parties of Democrat or Republican. Nothing to do with those things. It's just a form and a system of government. However, that system itself, just like I would say in Christianity, when it comes to a certain denomination, or a specific denomination, I should say, or a specific version of the Bible, we can make idols out of these things as well. And sometimes we deify the system as opposed to the Lord in Christianity. Now, speaking of Christianity, sort of diverging from the ancient Greeks, we're to worship Christ. But if we hold, for instance, a certain version of the Bible or a certain denomination above Christ, and our loyalties lie there instead of to him, we're no longer following Christ. Now, similarly with our government, when they are no longer doing what they have been called and appointed and chosen to do by the American people, and they have violated the Constitution of the United States, as we believe that certain folks have, and certain states possibly, or not states, I guess I should say, but there are certain things where we have that issue with whether it's who's responsible or who has the authority regarding how this whole election cycle went in certain states. And again, I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm ignorant of a lot of those aspects. What I am trying to say is they need to do the job within the scope that they were hired to do. And they are hired. They work for us. We are their employers. But we, as the American people, have seemed to have forgotten that. And again, we have a whole generation that has lived under the U.S. Patriot Act, which is, roughly 18, 19 years old. And so some young people voted in this election that had never lived before the Patriot Act was passed. And this is where I think every president and every Congress had failed since then, is it should have been repealed or revoked or voted out, however they do it. I'm ignorant of much of the system here, but it shouldn't exist. It should not in a free society such as ours. Now, the problem is, again, we have these extremely powerful individuals with a lot of power in their own hands. Now, it's funny because here's Speaker Pelosi. I believe she was talking with one of the chiefs of staff, or maybe more than one, when it comes to the military, about worrying about the president having his hands on the nuclear codes. Here's the other issue, and here's where a lot of the hypocrisy lies. Many conservatives, or many on the right, were okay when the powers of the president were expanded under George W. Bush after 9/11. The powers of the president seemed to continue to expand afterwards, and they didn't have a problem with it, whereas the Democrats did. Then when Barack Obama got into power, it was okay for him to increase his power as well, and to do things such as spy on the American people, right? I believe that was, and Bush may have done it too. You can educate me on this. I don't know everything about it, but it seems like they're okay with it on either side of the political spectrum, as long as their guy is in charge, their person is in charge. But that's not how we should think. What we should always worry about, and why we have these checks and balances in government, is it's not because if a very good-hearted, compassionate, very restrained and patient and self-controlled person is in charge, we should limit these powers because there is potential for someone that's not like that to be in charge. So it's the height of hypocrisy to sit there and praise our person, or our, whoever we support, and to denigrate the others and to sit there and worry about what happens if they're in power. Well, you shouldn't have to worry about that because nobody should have that much power. That is the hypocrisy of this. They're worried about a person having this power, yet they weren't when their guy was in charge. Same with those that supported the war in Iraq. And again, we've been at war for 19 years, spending $32 million per hour for 19 years. $32 million per hour, every 60 minutes. So that's what, a little over $500,000 per minute that we spend on the war machine. Again, people were okay with President Obama building and putting kids, quote, in cages, which I know is also an oversimplification. But then when this president came into office, he was criticized for doing the same. I'm uncomfortable with it either way, I'll be honest with you. And that comes from my spiritual beliefs. However, what I do want to point out is, again, the complete hypocrisy of the people that support these parties rather than deal with the issues at hand. People, please follow your conscience and not a demagogue regardless on which side that they're on. And I see the reason I'm being more outspoken now is because the attacks on freedom of speech. And people may say, well, the tech companies aren't really attacking your freedom of speech. It's their right. No, they are exempt from lawsuits because they were a platform, not a publisher. Once they start editing and censoring, and I'm not talking about things that are like threats. I'm not talking about illegal speech, like specific threats and things like that. I'm talking about people they don't like and kicking them off. Well, there's a problem there. And they didn't invent the internet. So, I mean, they're using a platform or some type of system that they didn't create either. So, I mean, really what it comes down to, again, why I call this the rise of the new gods. And again, this is just an intro. I'm going to be going much more into detail on this, is because we have a lot of power and we're being shown, at least what they're doing is they're unmasking themselves right now. And we're seeing them for the would-be dictators that they actually are. Because let's be honest, if any one of these people that are attacking each other right now, that are going for the throat, they're showing their true colors, they're going after the American people as well. And if that were to occur, if they were to have absolute power, what do you think they would do? Do you think they would restrain themselves? There's the philosophy in Plato. He wrote about Gyges' ring, right? There was this ring that belonged to this, I believe it was a giant, Gyges, and he had a ring, and it's basically, or I think where Tolkien got the idea from about the one ring and about being invisible, making the wearer invisible. And basically the argument was that if you could put on this ring and be invisible, you would become, or you would do such corrupt things because there would be no accountability. And it sort of leads into the argument of absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, I don't believe that. For one thing, I don't believe in absolute power outside of God. And even then, I don't believe that power corrupts. I believe that power is pursued and sought after by those who were already corrupt in their own hearts and their own minds. And again, maybe I'm wrong about this, but that's how I see it. I don't see it as power being a corrupt influence. I see power as something that people want to achieve because they have evil intent. And that's what I think this is. The legislative branch was not created to go after presidents with impunity, regardless of how any of you listening feel about President Trump. It doesn't matter if somebody hates him. And I'll tell you, from a Christian point of view, you shouldn't hate anybody. Don't hate anybody. Hate sin. Hate the things that we do that separate us from God and from one another. But do not hate another person in this world, nor yourself. Because Christ died on the cross for that. He paid it all for every single person that would ever live. So you don't have the right to hate. You may hate. You may think that's your right. But scripturally speaking, and speaking from a Christian and theological viewpoint, and from the viewpoint of Christ being the Savior of the world, you do not have that right. Only He has that right because He paid the price for them, for you. So let's get that out of the way. And this isn't meant to lecture anybody, but I mean, the facts are we keep sort of moving towards I can do what I want, and we have this sort of license to sin, and I'll just do whatever, and I'll lash out at people. No. Look, this is what's going on right now, is you have power plays going on. You have a lot of what I see as people being malicious and vindictive. And when they do that, you are already starting from a wrong point of view. If your point is to go after somebody, rather than the things that they did, rather than take issue with what happened, when you are going after somebody to destroy them, to destroy their reputation, to murder their reputation. That's called character assassination. And it shows that the person doing it has no character whatsoever. So again, the rise of the new gods, right? They meet in a temple. They're temple of democracy. The temple of democracy. That's interesting, right? You worship in a temple. You don't legislate in a temple. You worship there. And in fact, you're not even legislating now. You're actually going after political enemies. You're attacking political enemies. And I'm not naive enough or ignorant or that ignorant to believe that this doesn't happen. But it is so blatant. And the media has gaslit so many of us. And I'm not going to sit there and talk about how the president uses his terms and things like that for the media. I don't always agree with the president, and I don't particularly like his personality or the way he comes across. And again, I'm not a conservative. I'm not Democrat. I'm not liberal. You may think that I'm one or the other depending on my stance on a certain issue. And you feel free to ask me what I feel on any issue, and I will let you know. But I don't vote to make you believe the same thing. So there's the difference there. Now, going after somebody like that, you were using the power granted to you by the people that put you in office to pursue a personal and political agenda. That's corruption. That's corruption. It doesn't matter if you break any laws, just the heart that you would use this to go after somebody else. It's disgusting. And it's evil. And it's evil on every side, no matter who does it. No matter who does it. If our president lashes out at somebody and to return evil for evil, it's still evil. Don't get me wrong. I'm not defending any one person. What I'm trying to sit here and do is not even defend the truth, just flat out say it. It's not only immoral and unethical, it is spiritually, it's evil. So let us not invoke the name of God for anything we do for our own purpose, because anything we do that benefits us is selfish and it's not done in love. None of it is. The attack on the freedom of speech, that's one of our core tenets. I know that the Constitution and the amendments, they talk about inalienable rights, for instance. Now, they can alienate us from those rights. They can take them away. So I like to refer to them as not only inalienable, but inherent rights. These are the God-given rights that we as each and every human being have in us by virtue of being created and loved and paid for by a divine God, paid for our sins and the sin of the world. We've been lied to for so long and manipulated that they will show us something on television. They will show us something through the lens of a camera. We will see it with our own eyes. And yet we're told what you are seeing is not what you're seeing. I mean, this sort of reminds me, I know it's not funny, but it kind of is. Like you think of those when somebody catches like a cheating spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend cheating on them, and they say, this isn't what it looks like. We're basically like the person that's being cheated on, and we're being told that what we're seeing isn't what we're seeing. And we've been told that for years. And I, for one, I don't buy it. And it doesn't make me a member of MAGA, and Make America Great Again. It doesn't mean that I support or that I denigrate or that I'm against those folks. I think whether you're on the left or the right, even if you push a socialist or communist agenda, I think a lot of people I don't think a lot of them get into it and do these things out of an evil heart where they want other people to suffer. I think maybe their intentions are good, but I think they're ignorant of what's gone on because they're ignorant of the history. I think I read somewhere that 30 to 40% of college students right now do not know what the Holocaust is. How could they not? That was less than 80 years ago. It was less than 80 years ago when World War II ended and the camps were liberated. My goodness, people, please understand your history. Stop tearing down statues and maybe ask what they're about. And I know some of them I don't feel are appropriate either as far as to be worshipped or glorified. But put them in a museum or something. Learn from your history. Don't seek to destroy it, because that's what Hitler did. You need to understand this is what people did. Stalin did the same thing. Oh, let's pull down the statues of the people that were there before us. I mean, let's tear everything down so that we completely wipe them off the face of the earth. And in that way, they did it in ancient Egypt also with Akhenaten, right? You don't find really too many things of his out there. And they think by doing so, it'll be like they never existed and they won't be able to influence anyone anymore. That's wrong. There won't be any memory of, wow, they really messed up. You know, there won't be that memory of and we do have things like Holocaust museums, absolutely. But what Adolf Hitler did when he was developing or creating this myth, he and his minions and his ilk, when they were creating the myth of the Aryan and the Nazi Superman, I mean, he reached back through the mists of time and created a sort of, not theology, but sort of a history that didn't exist before that. Now, some of it did. There was some basis that he used. But he took Nietzsche's theology, or not theology, but Nietzsche's philosophy, kind of hijacked that, and they blended it together. Houston Stewart Chamberlain, right? He was English, but he married Richard Wagner's daughter after Wagner had died, and Wagner was into a pan-Germanic theology also. And they blended all of these things together, and there weren't too many people to say, you know, that didn't really happen, because anybody that said that was silenced. Stop silencing your political enemies. In fact, stop making political enemies. Stop silencing people that you feel disagree with you. There's a difference between disagreement and discrimination. And if you don't know that, you need to educate yourself. We need to stop listening to things that we're told. Try watching the news. I think I said this in an earlier intro. Try watching the news with the volume off and no captions. Just watch. Watch the images. Before we had sound, we had video. Before we had sound, we had pictures of the war. So, look, think for yourself, please, people. Not only that, think of what we're leaving our children. Care about somebody else beyond yourself. It is okay to have a healthy self-respect and healthy self-esteem, but it is not okay to trample over other people's rights. It is not okay. I heard. I'll have to find the quote, but I heard somebody that was talking negatively about Trump supporters and said that one of the problems with this is that we humanize them. But what are we supposed to do? Dehumanize them? We're going to go there. We haven't learned anything, right? From centuries and centuries of anti-Semitism. How the Nazis, and even not even beyond the Nazis, people would refer to the Jews as apes and subhuman. When we were in World War II, we would you look at even issues of, again, Captain America, right? They would have Japanese soldiers that look like yellowish demons with pointed ears and fangs. That's what happens when we dehumanize. They become something other and outside of ourselves. They become something outside of the protection of our God, and therefore they are to be taken off the field. Think about it. Think about it. The rise of the new gods. We're putting these people in a pantheon like they are somehow above us, like they're somehow irreplaceable. The events, the people that suffer, the people that actually died and were injured in that attack on the Capitol, I pray for and I grieve for them also. It was not right. And those lives lost, that was a horrible thing. I also saw them escort the speaker out while I believe it was maybe her aides were sit there and they left them. Like one person is more important than the other. But that's how we see it, right? We'll protect the president, but somebody else, I mean, it's collateral damage. We'll protect the vice president, the speaker, because our government has to continue. Our government has continued no matter who is in office, because we, the people, are here, because we have a constitution that no matter who is in power guarantees that our society continues as long as we don't violate it and then legislate against it. Just think about it. Spoiled children with immense power. That's the gods of Olympus. Zeus, I'll be blunt, he took whichever woman he wanted at the time, and he would have a child by them. It's not like they had a choice, right? Whatever he wanted to do. There were no real morals or ethics. They would use people as pawns. It's all throughout mythology. Odin, they would pit. The Valkyrie. They're the choosers of the slain, right? They go on the battlefield and take those who died and they take them to Valhalla. I mean, throughout human history, you have tales of gods manipulating people to their own ends. And we, the people, are fighting battles that the folks on Capitol Hill, the people in the White House, people in the seats of the governors and even local politicians, we fight their battles for them. And we often don't understand what's really at stake. So let's educate ourselves. Let's not be ignorant. Let's not just believe everything that's put in front of us. Facts and evidence, like John Adams said, right? Facts are stubborn things. John Adams defended the soldiers in the Boston massacre trials, defended the British soldiers. People were being tarred and feathered, and they were throwing, if I can recall correctly, like oyster shells at soldiers and things like that. And the people, some of the American people, the colonists, they hated them, hated the British. And here's this man that stands up, even though he is a patriot. He stands up and he defended them because that's what was right. He did what was right in his heart. So please do the same. Please do the same no matter what. And it's okay. I understand that. I get upset too. I get pissed off just like everybody else. Sometimes more so. I'm prone to angry outbursts and impatience. But what I pray that you do, that I have, doesn't make me any better, but I pray to God I don't carry those things. I don't wake up the next day in anger. I don't take them over and carry them and let it develop a root of bitterness in me. Forgive, walk in love, walk in forgiveness. I'm praying for everybody right now. I pray that God's will be done, and that I pray for, no matter what, I pray for, I guess I could say that I pray for peace, but I pray for God's will. However that's manifested. And I do pray for peace, and I pray for love, and that we all walk in it. But I do know sometimes people have to stand up. I know that sometimes people have to stand up and they have to speak out. They have to speak out. And without that freedom of speech and without those platforms, how do we do that? We're silenced. I don't want anybody to give me the Galileo treatment. I have the right to censor me and keep me from talking and speaking my mind. It's one of the things that our country is built on. So, again, the rise of the new gods. I'll be talking a lot more about this. I want to do like a series on it because I think there are very interesting parallels with people thinking that they are a god, like Pharaoh, for instance, right? Like the emperor. But we forget, we don't have anybody. Here's another thing, folks. At least the emperor, I know some of these things are like, well, did they really? Yeah, they did. They had typically it would be a slave or a conquered person that would be in the chariot when this general or the emperor is riding through, and he's got somebody in his ear saying, memento mori, right? Remember, you are mortal. Remember, you too will die someday. You're not a god. While everybody's praising them and worshiping them, you're not a god. You're mortal. Remember that you too are mortal. Well, listen, I know this was probably a little bit intense for some people. I don't know. Not for me. I mean, I can go there and come right back. It's not that big of a deal for me. But please think about what you're doing. Think for yourself. Speak when you need to speak, but consider other people and don't go on the attack. Don't become vindictive. It's no longer defense when you become vindictive and malicious and spiteful. You're doing the enemy's work for him. I mean, like Satan, like the adversary, in case anybody's wondering. So, again, God bless you guys, and I pray that however it comes, God's will be done. But I will continue to speak out myself, and I hope that you all do the same. All right, God bless you guys. If you need any prayer or anything, let me know, and you take care. And we'll be having some more videos soon, hopefully. All right. Bye-bye.